it's 2025. Yes. Which I know, like, if you're watching, you're like, it's not 2025 in this moment for you. I know that. But I am so excited to even think that we are so close to starting something fresh. I love fresh beginnings. It brings me so much joy to start new. And so on this podcast, we are going to share 3 things that each of us are carrying into this new year, and something that we are kind of putting a little bit of focus into that may spark something in you as well.
Cool.
So welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open the emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected in our relationships and in ourselves. I am your host, Tera Wages, and joining me is marriage and family therapist, clinical sexologist, Dr. Glenn Hill, and his incredible wife, Phyllis Hill. And together they have founded the Connection Codes, which is the guide to human connection. And we're so glad you're here.
Yes. Hello, world, and Happy New Year.
Yes.
Hi, friends. So I don't know who's listening today, as in what kind of person you are. Some people love January. They love a new year. They love January specifically because of goal setting and dream boards. I'm thinking of you, Bridget. She's my dream board girl. I don't know where I fall. I know a couple of years ago was the first time I ever did a dream board. That was quite challenging. And then I remember last year I did a dream board and I realized it was Echo's dream, not mine. So I created this beautiful board for all the things Echo. And I'm like, what is wrong with this picture? This is not me. This is my oldest daughter. And then I think I finally did one for me and it was small. And I'm like, okay, I can handle small. But for you as a listener, you may hate this time of year where you feel like you always come up with the dreams or the goals and then you last a week or two and then you fall apart. And for me, it's kind of brought back to this conversation, like, what is it for me? And I realize that I've talked about this a lot, just as far as figuring out routines that bring better health to my body. And we went through a lot of change in 2024, like a ton of change. And I am excited about 2025 almost because it feels like it's a blank slate. Like I'm so curious a year from now to be able to go, wow, look at 2025. You know, there's a lot of curiosity for me in beginning of this year, going into a new year. And one thing I think about is friendship and community. And earlier, Tera, you and I were talking, and I think it was just a moment where I said something about, I needed you the other day. Like I almost reached out, but then I feel guilt reaching out because I feel like you're already so busy. And I think I do that a lot with, so I keep myself almost out of community because I stop myself. I have all the reasons, almost like I'm not worth the trouble. And yet, without community, I'm really lost. And so I think in the planning of what we were going to talk about, I don't know if you were just speaking that over me, but that idea of community and that I want to make more effort to really have just friendship time and to really have that. I think my life in that sense is out of balance where I spend a lot of energy pouring into grandchildren, pouring into my kids, being able to always say yes to the needs they have. And yet I need community that pours into me. And so I would say some people have a word for the year. You as a listener, that may be your thing. I don't know. And I don't even know that it's mine, but I know that I have had some people lately speak into, like, mostly my kids, like, Mom, you should try this. You should do this. Go see this person. It has to do with like kind of physical therapy stuff. And I'm like, yes, but there's gotta be make that happen reality. I could write a long list of things I'm gonna do this year, but the actual doing them is where I really struggle. Like scheduling the time and making it happen and going forward with that. So yeah, I would say this is a good conversation. It's January, and I think we need each other in just supporting each other's dream. Like, I'm not a black and white January girl. I know, Tera, you're more the black and white.
I become a new person at midnight on January 1st.
That's really fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell us a little more about that,
Yeah.
because I'm definitely not that person.
Yeah. Oh, I have sparkles on. I wear like my special earrings, sequins, the whole situation. But also, I love a fresh start to the week. I love a fresh start to the month. I just really love starting new. And every year, Wes and I kind of get away over the weekend, that last weekend in December, and look back on our year. We reflect on a year to see what went well, what did not go well, and what do we want to see moving forward. And we do that every single year. And so it's really cool for us to look back and think so many of the things we actually did because we said them out loud, because we placed that intention. And it's cool to see there were probably 6 years where what Wes wanted to see moving forward was a better sex life, and it didn't improve from year to year. And now it's like, whenever it's what went well, I'm like, yes, buddy. Yes, sir. Yes, it did. Thanks to the connection codes. But it is very cool to be able to look back at those and read them with each other. And
You write them down?
we write them down and we revisit them each year. But it's also, I am someone of the mindset that many people set the goals or the resolutions and then they fall off the horse 7 days in. I am very much a pick it back up kind of person. And I have gotten better at not beating myself up if I fall off the horse. So if I do really well for the first 3 months of like building those connections and then something happens, well, that 3 months of me doing it is better than the 3 months of me not doing it. And so I can honor that part of the story as well. And I'm somebody, I always am trying to improve and grow and do different and better. The thing I'm doing this January that I'm really scared to say out loud, I'm going to get rid of all of my subscriptions for the month of January. No Netflix, no Hulu, no anything, because I feel like if I don't have that at night, I will wake up earlier, which is one of my goals. I will work out, which is one of my goals. Like, I think it would be a domino effect. So I just like to start the year fresh.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate you actually sharing one of yours, because I think even the idea, now I'm really curious, if you're looking back over 2024, what is it that you would share? Like, whether it's just your stuff or yours or Wes's, because I think it is really good. And I mean, I'm challenged by what you just said. Like, the reflection of, what are the highs and the lows? What were the accomplishments? What were the things that we set out to do and we did it, kind of thing.
Yeah. So I don't mind sharing. I mean, I'm an open book, but I would say that some of the lows were I was very isolated. I've talked a lot about it, of either over the summer of just being home alone a lot, or during the work week, just being in my office alone. It was a very isolating feeling. And I don't work super well in that environment. And so I would say that was something that I will note that this did not go well. And then towards the end of this year, I have been so busy during the week that Wes has expressed a lot of sexual loneliness every week. And I try to make up for it on the weekends, but then it's just kind of like, this is the season that we're in. And so just acknowledging that with him of like, I can see your pain and that did not go well. I need to find a way to balance my week a little bit better. And I think getting rid of subscriptions plays a role into that, at least for a short time. And then what else did not go well? We didn't have a whole lot of alone time. Our date nights were not as steady as they were, or we were filling them with other couples, other things. So we haven't had as much one-on-one time with each other. And then with my body, I stay pretty consistent of working out, but it's not a regular routine. I've done it once in the last 2 weeks, which is low for me. So that's something that I just want to like remotivate myself, which again, we talk about, which I know, Glenn, we talked about before this, the pain points and the joy points. When I look at the source of if there's one shift that I can make that could create a domino effect, what is that one shift? And for me, being able to say, okay, going to bed earlier, or if I'm not going to bed earlier, I'm at least reading a book that can fill my mind with some kind of knowledge, or working on a work project. I'm not above that at 9 p.m. That's at least productive versus watching Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. That's not great for my brain. And some of the things that did go well, I share on a podcast soon. I think I fell in love with motherhood this year. My kids all had a big shift, and I really I'm laughing with them. And I am finding joy, not just in their personhood, but I'm finding joy in being the mother to them. And that's different for me.
Dang.
Also, Wes and I got a trip to New York, and he planned a trip for me by myself to New York. That was really good. And work. We've seen substantial growth this year. We've definitely brought in some new programs. Our certified coaching program, which is kicking off in 2 weeks for the third cohort. And that went really well. So I'm starting to see some of the fruit of our labor, and that's extremely rewarding for me.
Yeah.
I do have a word of the year this year. Sorry, am I talking too much now? I fear.
That's great.
My word of the year this year is the word see. S-E-E. That kind of sea, not like sea, like the ocean. But I want to set the intention of seeing other people really well. I do recognize this year with the election and with all the divisiveness, it's easy for us to miss people and get caught up in everything. And so I want to make sure this year I see humans and get really curious about people. And then I also recognize that I can't grow this thing if I don't allow myself to be seen. And I know I show up on this podcast, but in my day-to-day, I'm not out there on social media. I am not calling my friends and be like, why are you not doing this yet? I am not allowing my story to be seen in a way because it's scary and I've experienced rejection. And so, I want to see and be seen this year.
Wow.
And that's my intention.
Wow.
Yeah. I am super pumped. I am ready.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it. Love
Yes.
That's remarkable.
So what are y'all's thoughts? Glenn, where are you at in the new year?
Well, one of the things that has been so intriguing watching for the two of us is we're so divergent right now. So much of what's happening is what I've been pushing for, who knows what, 15, 20 years, which there's an upside and the downside of that. The upside is it's spectacular. I mean, just here, we've shared about being in Fort St. John and seeing all the Connection Codes activity that's happening there that we had nothing to do with. I mean, you can trace some of it back, but to see Jordan and Erica being invited to come speak to places, and we're standing there in that circle and they don't invite us. They invited Jordan and Erica. Well, that's been my dream. That's what needs to happen. I would love to think that it will at least be a footnote in the Connection Code story, but it's the human story. It's not supposed to be Phyllis and Glenn's thing. That's one of the reasons we don't say we're the creators. We invented the Connection Codes. No, we didn't. So we're just seeing that happening, Connection Codes Canada, Connection Codes Germany. So all these things are starting to just light up and we hear about them. And your fingers are on the pulse of it far more than mine. But there's so many things happening now. It's like, wait, what? That happened too. So a big, probably pain, fear point for me is just knowing what am I supposed to be doing? I have a short list of things where it's like, I need to be doing that. I kind of have to show up for that. But a huge, huge craving, joy point for me is to get to write. I have so many novels. I've written several, never followed through to publish any of them. I'd like to write several more. That's one of the great benefits of dealing with schizophrenia is you just are full of all these things that you experience. And it's just a matter of if I can get them written down. So to figure out what I need, parentheses, have to be doing to fulfill my responsibilities, but then also what I would really love to get to do. And then also tuning in to Phyllis to help her. And I don't even know to what degree, I've talked about that a bit. Some of it may just be holding your hand, just being with you, not really figuring it out. But that's my great thrust in 2025 is just to figure out the things I must do and then do those well. But then the things that I would really, really love to do, which is primarily writing a lot more.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that each of these things that we're saying, like it does go back to having great community around you, that you're able to do that when you have community. Even this morning, like there's a task we have tomorrow. And so we co-regulate with each other. Like we work so much better when we have each other to do that with. And then Phyllis as well. We were talking before we started about how we start these things and we fall off because we don't have those people around us supporting us in that. And building those friendships that helps ground us. And we talked on the last podcast about your feeling of being disoriented in this season. And so having that community around you to help hold your hands and be with you as you figure it out. And then the same for me of just like having people around me to speak the truth and inspire and create with is so invaluable. I think our community matters. Gosh, like more than anything, along with our partners, our home inside, but who are we spending our time with? And I live by the philosophy of you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I learned that in 2010 and it changed my life. That's something else I do each year as I go through and I write out who those 5 people are and how they are impacting me. And then also how I may be impacting them. And so I encourage our listeners to think through that lens as well. As you're going through starting this year, who are those people speaking into you? Who are the people that are going to help support you in reaching your dreams and your goals? And how are you supporting them as well? And with that, I have to do like a little side note that if you're not on our newsletter yet, you need to get on there because we have some very exciting news coming your way. So click the link down below, subscribe so you can get information about what we have coming. But yeah, I am just thrilled over looking forward into this next year and not only what we're going to do individually, but as a collective with the people that are watching and listening. So I encourage y'all to just dig deep in yourself. Can we do a core emotion wheel over even like where we're at? And
Absolutely.
Okay.
Can you start?
I will start. Ooh, I have anger. I have anger for all of the times, even throughout the year when I enter into that autopilot mode, where I reach a point of coasting and I'm not in that intentional space where I know that I thrive in. So anger in that and the years that I spent there. And I feel shame. I feel shame because I do have that message in the back of my head of who do you think you are? Like you're supposed to stay small. For you to want to do something is vain and selfish. And so I have shame in dreaming big. I have guilt. I do have guilt over this last year of like thinking through where I have missed in my time. I was so devoted to being in the office and like cranking through things that I haven't spent much time with my mom and family. And so definitely guilt over that. Fear. There always is this underlying fear of the next year because my story is what's about to screw this thing up. What is actually going to come in here and disrupt? And so there's always this part of me that like wants to hold back because I'm waiting on the shoe to drop.
Wow.
So fear in that, which I've processed on here. I've had several Januaries where there were 2 Januaries. Milo almost died. Wes almost died. And another year I was having like horrible thoughts. So there's this fear in January for me.
Wow.
Lonely. Lonely and looking forward. I think the loneliness is that so much of it, I do put a lot of pressure on myself and it does feel very much up to me. How I show up each day is ultimately up to me. And so there is loneliness in that. Sad. This year, there are some goals that Wes and I are working on together that I know we're not going to achieve. Like this next year is still going to be a building year for us. Wes is working towards his 1,500 hours of piloting. And we won't get there by December of next year. So there is sadness for me to know that we're entering in something that will get close, but not fully there. Hurt. I feel hurt My hurt is that I was not born a morning person. I desperately want to be a morning person. I feel like that's the key to unlocking everything. And I really do try. And I do the mind tricks and all the things. And I still find myself at 11 p.m. just like, oh, just one more episode. I just want to detox from my day. So yeah, hurt that that's not how I was wired. Wes popped up this morning. I was like, how's it feel to be a morning person? You know? And joy, so much joy in the life that we have built because of the connection codes. And thinking back through the last 4 years of processing the what went well, what didn't go well, and the impact that these tools made on us in those conversations versus the 4 years before, we've always been intentional people. Yeah. But it's like we were always trekking up. And now we're skyrocketing because of these tools in our connection with each other. Yeah. So lots of joy in that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's amazing. So now I just want to check, because like I'm a early morning person.
Yeah.
I try to get to bed by 2, 3 a.m. And
I was going to say, I thought that you were a night person. Okay.
And I'm pretty emphatic in that. And Phyllis is strict about it. She's like, oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, last night, a kid woke up twice with a nosebleed in the middle of the night. Another kid got into bed with me, and he got into bed at 3:41. And I stayed awake for about an hour, and I tried to just convince myself, just get up. Just go ahead and do it. Think about everything you can get done if you get up right now. And luckily, I didn't. I went back to sleep. So the thought of waking up at 6 a.m. and committing to that, and that's even late for some people, feels very overwhelming. But it's my dream. It's my biggest dream.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not cursed with that. Sorry.
No, I respect that.
So those kids that got in bed with you, did you know them, or were they just random neighborhood?
I did know him,
okay, good.
And he was scared.
Sure.
And Wes eventually moved to the couch. He's never done before. That was the very first time he ever got up. We were so tired at that point. He'd already been up multiple times. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a night for sure.
Oh. Do we have to do an issue-specific wheel? Is that what you told us to do?
I kind of prompted it, but you do you.
Okay,
you
great.
do whatever needs to come out.
I get to do me.
Yep.
Well, I don't even know if this is possible because what my heart is telling me. So I'll just start with joy. How about that? What I'm trying to do is an issue-specific wheel about Tera wages. There's so much joy, so I don't know how I can do it because I don't know that I can do all 8. Because you just kind of ended with talking about like the past 4 years since you were introduced to the connection codes. And it's like that reminder of how you guys pursued us. I remember the very first email that came. We were at the barn with the whole family around the holidays, 2020. So I would say I remember there was a ton of joy in that. And I think the emotion would also be like, in some ways, some fear, like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen with this couple that's reaching out, and probably even some shame of who we are or need to be or who they think we are. And then I just remember we met you and Wes over Zoom, and it was so incredible. And then it wasn't much later that I think we met in person for the first time. You know, I think that, and maybe it kind of is a bigger theme as far as the fear of the unknown, right? Like you're taking a risk, you're taking a chance on a relationship. And I remember even our son Sky, he was real leery, like, Mom and Dad, y'all are so trusting. Like, who are these people? Yeah. And it was as though you and Wes put out your intention from the beginning. Like, y'all were just super transparent. And you were on our first webinar. And as our listeners, I don't know, someday we may try to find that original and share it with the world, because we've come a long, long way since that first webinar. But you fell in love with that back in a day when it was grainy, it was bad sound, it was a horrible camera on a very old laptop. It was lamps turned on for our lighting, but it was raw and it was real and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And it is such a testament to our journey over the past 4 years with you and just where we are today. And I know you don't get enough recognition as far as where Connection Codes is today is because of Tera Wages and In the Shadows, West Wages, like you guys showing up and saying, we want to work with you when we didn't even know what that meant. Like seriously did not know what that meant. And you were like, hey, your ads on Facebook are bad. We didn't even know that. We had no idea. I don't think we'd ever seen any of our ads. And you're like, we would like to help you and we'd like to film some things that are better, you know? And we were like, okay. And I would say we've grown a lot in knowledge since then, but it's crazy to me what we didn't know and yet trusted y'all in your intention and your heart and it was like you guys were out to prove who you were to us. But to me, it's the most beautiful story ever and will always be because it came from such a beautiful place. And we were naive and unaware of the help we needed and what could come. I would say, yes, Glenn is the dreamer, but he's not the implementer. And I had no knowledge of how to implement all the things that have happened in the past 4 years. And it's because of you. And I'm just in awe and so thankful for you and mention it all the time. I just cannot imagine where we would be today, where Connection Codes would be, which means all of you who are listening, this would not be happening if Tera Wages had not come into our life. And, you know, Wes is behind the scenes a lot. He's the kind of the tweaking here and there. And he's the one who knows a lot of the technical stuff and makes, I think probably Glenn is fluttering around with dreams and says a lot of dreams. And Tera actually now has a document that she just sticks his dreams on. It's kind of hilarious, but that's one way to do it. Just put it on a piece of paper somewhere in the sky. And then you go, okay, what's implementable now? And then I think you turn to Wes often and go, okay, do you think we need 3 cameras or 4? And Wes goes, I think you can do it with 3. And, you know, he's that quiet behind the scenes cheerleader, probably one of our biggest cheerleaders.
For sure.
Miss West Wages. But I know I'm not doing the wheel. I just needed you to hear. I wanted our audience to hear just how much you mean to this whole thing. And I don't say it enough, but I think that the world benefits from all your hard work and just the behind the scenes, the constant. And yes, our team is growing, but we're still a really small team. And we try our hardest to answer emails and to get things resolved that are glitching or whatever. And I know we do have some really big things in 2025. And one of them kind of goes back to community, you know, that we want to be able to give our Connection Coders community.
Yeah.
And in 2024, we launched the coaching certification, which the thing that we've heard, and now we're about to start the 3rd one, but the thing that we've heard over and over is that what people did not expect was the community inside of the coaching cohort.
Yeah.
And it is truly undescribable and incredible when you meet with a bunch of people you don't know through Zoom and you become so raw and so transparent so quickly.
Yeah.
And then what we love hearing is how I was just with someone this week visiting, and she was telling me how she does Zoom calls constantly with 2 of the people that she met. And that is the dream, because that has nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
We're not coordinating that. That's people who met and shared their lives and now continue in that relationship. And that is just so beautiful and powerful. And I want everyone to have a chance to do that. And it's like, wow, talk about community, talk about connection, talk about having that kind of support. As you start the new year, I love that what you said earlier about the 5 people around us. Who are your 5 people?
Yeah.
Are they pouring life into you or are they sucking you dry?
Yeah.
Because you know what? You may need 5 different people. Like you may need to find your people where you're safe, but you're also loved well and you're poured into. And I think the things that we accomplish when you're in community is incredible.
Yeah.
Like when you have that people that believe in you and people who are holding you up and pouring into you. And that's the power of the ooh. They're not trying to fix me, but they hear me, they see me, and they love me well. And it helps put that one foot in front of the other kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so much can be accomplished. Like we look back over the year and we're like, oh my word, we really did it. And I remember when we first launched our very first group, we had so much fear of all the things that could go wrong or that we weren't quite ready. And every week we were running to get it done for the next week. And it was like, oh my goodness, how much more could we have to do? And yet we did it. And the group loved it.
Yeah.
And we've had great growth because of that first group. And it's just so incredible. And I'm just so thankful for you and Wes. You have to make sure he listens to this episode.
I will.
And just so blown away by what you saw. I don't know that I'll ever understand it, really, truly. That you could see one. I mean, you felt that after the first week. Yeah. And I'm like, what in the world? It was bad quality and bad sound and two frumpy old people.
Well, I do. One, I'm like trying not to cry on you saying that. Thank you so much for your kind words to me. Words of affirmation fills me up so much and gives me a lot of identity, to use a Connection Codes word. Yeah. But 2 things come to mind about that. Well, one of them is that I knew I loved Wes Wages the moment that I saw him. I've talked about that.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me, there was something, the second y'all came on, I was like, this is it. These are my people. I will work with these people. And so for our listeners, that's actually a really good point, is that you got on Zoom with a bad computer. That's the wrong way to say it. But, like an older computer, you were turning on lamps. You didn't know how to work Zoom. You were figuring it out as you go. And the impact of that is tremendous. Tremendous. And so many people wait. They don't act because I don't have it all together. And the 2 of you didn't stay stuck in that. So like that was the first example of what it looks like to not stay stuck in something. Like y'all are the prime examples of that mission of not staying stuck. And from there, I mean, truly the entire process has just been the greatest gift in the world to my own life. I have shared this. Now I have fear and like saying it out loud because I know my father-in-law started listening to the podcast. So hello, you father-in-law who I love. But Sky was so hesitant to like bring me in, your son. And I just wanted to look at him and be like, Sky, I had not had an orgasm in 3 years. And then after watching your parents, I had 3 in 1 week. Like, you want to know why I'm doing this? And so the impact, that's like my joke about it. It is true. Yeah. But the impact of this goes so deep into people's lives. And truly, in starting 2025, if you've not done this work, you are doing a disservice to yourself, to your family. And it all comes back to the 2 of you turning on that Zoom camera before you were quote unquote ready to. And so anyone that's listening, whatever it is that you don't feel ready for, start. Don't wait to be ready, because you will never be ready. And the impact of those things, even for people that are like, yeah, one day I want to be a certified coach. What are you waiting on? We're starting in 2 weeks. You better call me like tomorrow so we can get you in. But don't put things off that your heart is longing to do, because the 2 of you doing that has changed everything for so many people.
Well, thank you for saying that. I think about Teamship and how we had people hold our hands, which is also incredible, because there was so much that very first group that went through. the person who asked us, Brian Harris, asked us if we would do it through Zoom. And I don't know if he used the word webinar. I'm not sure, but we didn't know what any of it was. And so, yes, we were technically very challenged, but there was patience and people like Brian, he'd go, okay, see the little button at the bottom of your screen. Make sure you push that button. And there were hundreds of people on because it was March of 2020, COVID. And that's when the very first time happened. And I just think about that with the fear of shame. We would have never done it because we knew we didn't know too many. There was too many things we didn't know. And there was too many things that like even turning on the camera or like sharing the screen or whatever things we had to do. Like there was so much potential of the fear of shame, but yet to be able to just say it, just to say, well, a lot of fear. We don't know what we're doing. I would probably say if we went back and listened to all of those podcasts we did, we probably started many of them saying so much fear.
Yeah.
This isn't going to go right. No, so much fear. Can y'all even see us? I mean, we were talking to a laptop, an old laptop, which, means you're looking at a little tiny hole. And yet it was the people around us that said, this is worthy of this. This is so needed. And then people, Brian especially, no matter what we ever did, he would go, that was great. That was excellent. Like he was always just such a cheerleader. And we had no idea how bad our camera was. We genuinely didn't. It was much, much later that we learned that.
Well, I was going to say that we actually thought we were doing pretty darn good. Thank you very much. And it was many, many, many months later when we upgraded to a decent camera.
To an actual
look
camera.
back at the old ones, we're like, oh, crap. And it always makes me think of like the 1940s films where, the people look like stick figures walking because the film is so grainy and so slow. But I didn't know that until I saw a different quality. And I was like, oh, one of the things that Brian says, one of my favorite quotes of his, he says, if you're releasing a perfect product, you're waiting way too late. And another friend of mine, and I don't know how to get this out into the culture, but people talk about being a perfectionist, talk about perfectionism, and he calls it productivity stunted. And because perfectionism sounds cool, it's like, oh, well, I'm a perfectionist. And I've always hated that term because it almost sounds like something to put on your resume, that I'm almost bragging about, oh, I'm a perfectionist. No, that just means you're stunted productivity-wise because you're wanting this to be perfect. So you're going to release it, who knows what, 6 months, 6 years later than you should have. And Brian's whole thing is just throw it out there. Just don't throw out crap, but just get it done. Get it released. You'll make it better next time. What I struggle with so much is I'm going to do it perfectly. And so I do one every 5 years. Well, you just missed out on 85% of your productivity because you're wanting to release that one perfect thing. And again, I've always viewed it as people present it as a badge of honor or something. Oh, I'm a perfectionist. It's actually really, really detrimental for you. And anyway, that's just was such a big thing that Brian was just this, and he was gentle, but he was an irresistible force. He was just going to keep moving forward. And we were just caught up in his inertia. It's like, oh, well, I guess we're doing this thing. Is it ready? Who cares? Just do something because something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And that's been such a big thing.
Yeah.
Such a big theme the last several years. We keep saying 4 years. It's actually been about 5 now.
Yeah.
And so many things that are being done worldwide. The Connected Codes universe is just ever expanding. And it ain't perfect, but we're doing something.
Yeah.
And it's changing literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people's lives.
Love that. So before we wrap up, and I do a wrap up, Glenn, would you like to do the wheel?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's so much joy for me. I'm just blown away. Everywhere we go now, we meet connection coders. I've shared that before, that hearing things that the connection codes are doing, I'm like, really? I hadn't heard about that. And it's just endless now. There's so many moving parts, which is a great upside. The downside is, oh, crap, what do we do next? But there's so much joy in that. Lots of fear that what to do next, what to focus on. Somebody contacted us last week. When are we going to translate this into Portuguese? It's like, oh, we'll start this afternoon. Let me go learn Portuguese first real quick. But I mean, it's just endless and so much fear that we're missing. When you have 29 things that you could be doing, how do you pick the correct one or the correct two to focus on? And I am horrible at that. So lots of fear that we'll miss the priority ones and do the lesser priority ones, which is definitely my tendency. Some loneliness in that at times, just knowing my role. What the heck am I supposed to be doing? What can somebody else do? Elijah Runyon has just been spectacular. And he's one of those that does stuff. And I'm like, oh, that was on my list of something that ought to be tended to in the next 6 weeks. I just, oh yeah, I did that yesterday. I'm like, shoot, that's amazing. Let's see here. Lots of guilt and shame in that. I mean, even just like with Elijah, I'm like, crap, this dude is just hitting home run after home run after home run. And I'm not even returning his texts. I'm not even tuning into him, paying attention. And, he asked me a question 9 days ago. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to respond to that. I just miss a whole lot with that. Hurt, gracious. I don't think of any hurt with any of it. I guess there is sharp stabbing pain occasionally, just thinking, oh crap, I didn't get that done. I didn't do that. Should have done that. Could have done that. Needed to do that. And I just didn't get it done. And now somebody else, hopefully, is handling it. I'm all the way up to 8 yet. I've lost track. Oh, the anger. Yeah, lots of anger just driving. We're doing this. And the momentum is so much now. The velocity, it just keeps itself going. I mean, lots of people are doing lots of things, but it just keeps going. There's so many people that are doing stuff now. And I just want to be driven to fulfill my role, to do what needs to be done, what I can do, and to do it well, to not drop the balls in 2025, and make sure that we are on point as much as possible.
I love that. Thank you so much. So if you are listening, you may be a Glenn, a Phyllis, or a Tera. The three of us are kind of the spectrum of people starting a fresh year. But Glenn, I actually love that last thing that you said that Brian Harris imparted onto you is that doing something is better than doing nothing. And the theme of last week's episode and this week's episode, it really is just don't stay stuck in where you're at and look at the community around you. Are those people lifting you up, empowering you, speaking truth, speaking life? If you're showing up to girls' night and they're all bashing their husbands, next thing you know, you're going to start bashing your husband. We become the people around us. And so looking at those people so you can find the people that do propel you forward. So you cannot be productivity stunted or a perfectionist, but you can actually find the thing that can move you out of the pain and into more joy in a way that's connecting with those around you. And so I do encourage everyone to take a moment and reflect. If nothing else, reflect on where you've been. I love hearing the story, like you sharing of how this even started, how we got here, the three of us together and looking back so it helps us cherish so much what we are building to move forward. And you taking that time to reflect for yourself gives you that momentum. Like, I'm fired up hearing Phyllis say that. You tell me that once a quarter, I will freaking dominate this thing for you. And it takes that moment of reflection and honoring your story to be able to propel you into what is next.
Yeah, and I want to mention this one thing just because, and again, I love that you say, just the different perspectives, different points on the spectrum. I think the majority of people are not. I did P90X for like 3 weeks several years ago and hated every minute of it. And I'm probably get sued for this, but I'm not a P90Xer. I did it just because I'm obsessive. Once I said I was going to do it for 3 weeks, I did it. But I think most people are not that.
Yeah.
And they need teamship. They need smaller increments, not kamikaze every day for the rest of your life. Yep. I don't think most people can operate that way. So we just encourage people, do a little increment and for yourself, but also you'll be surprised. Just share a podcast with somebody. And we hear from people literally around the world all the time. We're like, oh, a friend of mine shared this podcast with me. Or a friend of mine sent me a link to this, whether the podcast or to the book or to the foundations. Just do something, because everything is micro. And I'm a visionary. We talk macro all the time. It doesn't matter. All that matters is micro. And the wife and husband who are drowning today do not care that we have Connection Coast coaches in however many different countries we have now, representing, I think, 5 or 6 different languages. They don't care. All he knows is that he feels lonely with her this afternoon. And he's dying. He's drowning. So all he needs is a link to the podcast or whatever. Just do this little thing. And it's amazing to me, the web. I always talk about Jordan and Erica Coop, and their web is ridiculous. I mean, and they've been Connect Coaches, I think, is it 2 years, 3 years, something like that. And the phenomenal effect that their life has had. And it's not because they bought a bunch of billboards around town and, you know, bought some Super Bowl commercials. No, they're literally just doing one little thing at a time, and it gets traction points. And all of a sudden you look around and you're like, oh my gosh, where'd all this come from? It came from their little effort on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
And everybody can do that. This is not some superstar marketing genius thing that you do. No, you just send a link. You just share what you know.
And hearing that, I also think like it applies to that philosophy applies to everything.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if it's your marriage that you're in pain in, just do a little bit. Lift that 1 pound weight. That do one validation. Like do these small movements to move yourself forward, and just don't repeat the same exact thing you did yesterday. I love that philosophy. Doing something is better than doing nothing, and it does not have to be huge. It's just showing up and doing it. And so we are here on your journey as you're on ours with us. And we want to support you in this. We want to be a part of that community journey that you are building. And so again, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. If you've not already downloaded the Core Emotion Wheel, grab that wheel and let us be on your team in 2025. Let us be people that you can come to when you have a question, when you're needing that extra support. We do this because
you need this.
You deserve this. So let's do this.
Let's do this.